But first, the Army General, who's now in charge in Thailand, has summoned the former Prime Minister, as well as her political opponents, for talks. Yingluck Shinawatra is also one of 155 prominent Thais who've been banned from travelling abroad. Scott Heidler has a story now from Bangkok.
Once the stage for the anti-government movement in Bangkok taken down and removed the morning after the military coup. The protesters left Thursday night. Most felt that their effort of more than 6 months paid off because of their goal of removing the current government had been reached. Ratchanuk, who goes by one name, went to work as normal on Friday. She's relieved the army is in control.
Personally, I support coup d'etat. If the army didn't do it, the country would turn into a real mess. No one is ready to compromise in order to make the situation better.
This is the Army Assembly Hall, where more than 100 people from both sides of the political divide have been summoned by the military rulers to discuss the situation. And it's one of few spots in Bangkok where it actually looks like a coup has taken place.
One of those summoned to the talks, former Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra. Long Yim Yem supports the government and feels betrayed by the army. She was outside the compound where the talks were being held, showing her support for Yingluck.
Because she is the only woman who was elected by the people. We want her to be the Prime Minister again, and we want to support her to fight for the people.
The streets of Bangkok appear to be normal. But with detentions, travel bans, control over the media, and the constitution suspended, there is no question that the army is in control. Yet military leaders have given no answers as to when the country will once again be ruled by civilians or returned to being a democracy. Scott Heidler, Al Jazeera, Bangkok.
OK, let's go live now to Scott and get the very latest. Scott, first of all, let's talk about those political talks. Yingluck Shinawatra, as well as her political opponents, having been summoned for this meeting. Is that meeting still going on?
Martine, yes, it is, and actually we've gotten a little bit more detail about that. It sounds as though there were several meetings that went on, and the general, the army commander, went to all of these meetings. One was with civil servants who are working with the government now in different ministries. We know that he chaired this meeting and discussed with them what should be done in the coming days. In other words, we need to keep this government moving. What do we need to do to get it done? The Army General was working with them on that. And then there was another meeting with some of those who were summoned to come to that government complex where we were at most of the day. We don't really know what the details of those meetings were. And then there's going to be a third meeting that probably just started over the last couple of minutes, and that is going to be a briefing, if you will, to foreign diplomats here in Bangkok, explaining the situation the general will be doing, of why he called for the coup, maybe what's going to be happening going forward, which is very interesting because when he made the announcement about this coup on Thursday, immediately after he said that he was taking control of the government, he said that all relationships, international relationships that Thailand has established with countries around the world remain intact. And then he made another point of saying that the embassies and foreign nationals living in Thailand will be protected. So obviously that's a very important thing to the general. And again, you know, there's that meeting that's going on probably right now that he's explaining to the diplomats here in Thailand why he did this and what's going to be happening over the coming days.
And Scott, we're going to be talking a little bit more about that later on in the programme because, as you say, there's a very, very important element to what's gone on in Thailand. But in the meantime, can you tell us a bit more about the political activists on both sides of the divide and how they're feeling about the possible circumscription of their civil liberties? And we know that they've just left their camps without too much of a fuss.
Right. Some did leave. Well, you're right. Both left without too much of a fuss, but in very, very different situations. When you look at the red shirts, they're the pro-government movement. Their camp was about an hour outside of the central part here of Bangkok. They were forcibly removed by the army. There were no scuffles. There was no violence at all. The army said that they provided transportation for those who didn't have any way to get out. And then you look at the yellow shirts. That's the anti-government movement that's been on the streets of Bangkok in one form or the other or another for the last 6 months. They left on their own free will, mainly because they see this coup as a bit of a victory for them, because what they have been fighting for is for the current government, then current government, to be removed and the Prime Minister to be removed. that has happened through a military coup. So they view this as a bit of a victory. So they left peacefully. We were there on Thursday evening when they were leaving, packing up, kind of cheering and walking out and clapping, and someone on the loudspeaker even saying that, you know, this is our victory. And then that stage was actually being dismantled this morning as well. So you have two different sides of this, you know, one seeing it victorious, that the coup happened, and the other one not so happy about it. And we heard from that woman in that story, and she shares a sentiment of a lot of red shirts, pro-government people. They feel as though that their party, who was democratically elected to run this country, has been unseated by the military.
All right, Scott, thank you for that. Scott Heidler there giving us the very latest from Bangkok. Well, as Scott alluded to, a number of countries have already condemned this coup. The French President, François Hollande, he called for an immediate return to the constitutional order and for the fundamental rights and freedoms of the Thai people to be respected. Britain's Foreign Secretary, William Hague, he called for Thailand's military to set out a quick, clear timetable for elections. And US Secretary of State John Kerry said there's no justification for this military coup, urging the restoration of civilian government immediately. All right, well, let's talk now to Tim Forsyth, who is a specialist on Southeast Asia at the London School of Economics. And he joins us live from London. And thank you very much indeed for talking to us. We heard from Scott, our correspondent in Bangkok, that the generals are already preparing to brief the diplomatic corps in Bangkok, an indication of how foreign relations really matter for Thailand.
Yes, indeed. I think the Thai military have been holding back from doing a coup for a long time. They could have acted in any month before today. Now they have. I think they are now also into a damage limitation exercise just to make sure that they do not lose credibility by doing this.
But in the absence, it would appear, of a roadmap or a plan or a schedule for a return to democratic life in Thailand, it seems as though their credibility is going to seriously be in need of an uplift, because nobody is prepared to listen to them whilst they're in charge.
Well, I think it depends on whether they can do what the foreign ministers have been asking them to do, which is to come up with an immediate short-term plan to hold general elections. I think there is one big justification behind this coup, which is that with the deposal of Yingluck Shinawatra 2 weeks ago, Thailand is basically rudderless. And on the streets, there you get groups of, excuse me, you get groups of the red shirts and the yellow shirts growing, and it could lead to violence. Excuse me. The army, therefore, are acting in ways to, sorry.
That's all right,
are acting in ways to try and get rid of that potential violence. But they can only really have credibility as long as they name a process to have general elections.
OK, Tim, no, take your time, clear your throat. Quite often this happens to me, you get a frog in your throat. I'd like to ask you particularly then about the threat to tourism. Of course, tourism contributes around about 10% to the entire Thai economy. And we've had the Australians and the Malaysians both warning their citizens against travel to Thailand at the moment. So this is something that could conceivably be a big hit to the Thai economy, isn't it?
Yes, indeed it is, and I think sometimes the politicians in Thailand act in ways which do not take account of tourism properly. I should say this, though, that the coming months of June, July, August are the low season for tourism in Thailand, mainly because it's rainy. And I think you know, the main, if they can sort out the problems by the end of the month of August, then I think the main tourist season will not be affected. But it is a worry. I mean, one study recently has revealed that the Thai economy has contracted by 2% during the first quarter of 2014. And people are blaming that upon the political troubles. So, yes, it is a concern.
All right. For now, Tim, thank you very much indeed. Tim Forsyth, a specialist on Southeast Asia at the London School of Economics in London.